In a 1972 interview, he describes an idea for a prologue, ultimately never filmed. "What I want to show is the necessity to adapt oneself to changing circumstances. The inability to adapt brings destruction. I already have the first scene in my mind. As the film opens, the audience sees a wide expanse of snow. Then the camera closes in on a clump of trees, while the sounds of a strong gale fill the screen. There is a huge tree in the center of the screen, and it is all covered with thick snow. Suddenly, there is a loud snap, and a huge branch of a tree falls to the ground. It cannot yield to the force of the snow, so it breaks. Then the camera moves to a willow tree which is bending with the wind. Because it adapts itself to the environment, the willow survives." A key inspiration for this new idea happened during a trip to India in 1970, scouting locations for an abandoned project called the Silent Flute. Bruce was struck by the ancient pagodas he saw there, and began to devise a scenario where his vision of a multi-level film became literal. One fighter ascending the temple higher and higher, taking on ever greater challenges on his way to the top. What little is known about Bruce's plans for the story of the Game of Death largely stems from a collection of handwritten notes uncovered in a Seattle warehouse belonging to the Lee estate in the mid-1990s. As with The Way of the Dragon before it, a full script is never written for the Game of Death, and indeed, Bruce continues to change his mind about the plot, devising new characters and whole subplots, right up to the day he dies. Though this stands in stark contrast to Western film production, where everything is usually written and planned well in advance, it is the norm in Hong Kong filmmaking, where cast and crew members might come and go depending on the vagaries of scheduling, and dialogue is sometimes agreed upon only minutes before cameras begin rolling. What these semi-improvised, low-budget films lack in polish and narrative finesse, they often compensated for in spontaneous energy and invention. Over the coming months, Bruce slowly fleshes out a story for his next film. On one level, it is an action film showcasing an array of fighting techniques. On the other, it is Bruce's philosophy for Jeet Kune Do literalized in cinematic form. No way as way, no limitation as a limitation. Whereas The Way of the Dragon and Lee's prior films were rooted in the real world, and even inspired in some cases by real-life figures, his aim for the Game of Death was something altogether different, something stranger, perhaps even metaphysical. Bruce will play the central character of Hei Tian, a retired champion fighter who, as the film begins, is on a flight to Korea with his sister and younger brother. When they land at the airport, the trio are kidnapped by the henchmen of a local crime boss. The gangster holds Hei Tian's family hostage, unless he volunteers to fly out to a secluded compound in the Korean wilderness, in the middle of which is an ancient pagoda 5 floors high. The boss wants something from the top of the pagoda, and Hei Tian will have to battle his way through various opponents to get it, one level at a time. Each opponent is a representative of a different fighting style, with Hei Tian having to assess each fighter's abilities and adapt his own techniques in order to climb the tower and win his siblings' freedom. Hei Tian is joined on his mission by a handful of the crime boss's underlings, each motivated by greed and ambition in their quest to make it to the top. When they reach the compound, Hei Tian and the others are confronted by dozens of nameless karate fighters guarding the outside of the pagoda. Upon dispatching the fighters, a locksmith breaks them inside the temple. The opponent they face on the ground floor is a master of Hapkido, especially skilled at kicking. After defeating him, they ascend to the second level, guarded by an expert in praying mantis kungfu. Sadly, though Bruce wrote dialogue for many of the aforementioned sequences, he would not live long enough to actually film them, nor would he ever write the story's grand conclusion. Instead, the only scenes that saw the light of a camera, barely coherent out of context, show Hei Tian's ascent up the remaining 3 floors of the pagoda. The Hall of the Tiger, in which he and 2 other fighters battle an expert in Filipino eskrima techniques, not least mastery of the deadly nunchaku. The Hall of the Dragon, where Hei Tian fights another Hapkido grandmaster, this time one adept at grappling and hand-to-hand combat. As post-production on The Way of the Dragon approaches its end in August of 1972, Bruce begins to assemble his co-stars for the Game of Death. For the henchmen accompanying Hei Tian, Lee jots down the names of 4 actors: James Tien, his co-star in The Big Boss and Fist of Fury; Che Yuan, a former stuntman for Shaw Brothers; Carter Wong, whom Bruce has met on the set of the Golden Harvest film Hapkido; and Tony Liu, who also co-starred in Lee's 3 previous films. As the latter 2 characters were slated to be killed off before reaching the Hall of the Tiger, Wong and Liu never film any scenes for the Game of Death, and in Liu's case, his name is ultimately crossed out altogether, rumoured to be replaced with a white American fighter. As with his previous film, Bruce shows a preference to cast not trained actors with some martial arts skills, but rather expert martial artists with little to no previous experience on camera. Among them are 2 of his favourite former students and closest friends from America: Dan Inosanto, with whom he founded his Jeet Kune Do school in Los Angeles, and rising NBA basketball star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Neither of them has ever appeared in a motion picture before. As Bruce continues to flesh out the story, and a single set is built at Golden Harvest Studios that will stand for each floor of the pagoda, he plans to start filming at the end of September. But fate threatens to intervene when he calls Abdul-Jabbar and offers him the role of the final Guardian. Though the basketball star is currently on 3 weeks leave, he is due to start an NBA training camp in the middle of the month, making his participation in the film impossible. Determined to get his vision on screen, Bruce tells him to board a plane to Hong Kong as soon as he can. They will simply film all of his scenes ahead of schedule, in plenty of time for him to return to the USA for training. Thankfully, Abdul-Jabbar agrees, and so filming of the Game of Death begins, perhaps fittingly, at the story's end. With a handwritten shot list and choreography notes in place, Lee assembles much of the crew from The Way of the Dragon to join him for filming his battle against Abdul-Jabbar. Among them are assistant director Ricky Chick and 50-year-old Japanese cinematographer Tadashi Nishimoto. In addition to Abdul-Jabbar, James Tien, Bruce's co-star from The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, joins the first round of filming. Bruce, Tien, and Abdul-Jabbar participate in the promotional photo shoot as filming commences. In the years that follow, it is these images, taken by freelance photographer Chan Yuk, published far and wide by the media in the wake of Lee's death, that propel the incomplete Game of Death project to almost a mythic status. Filming begins on September 7th on the top secret project, with Bruce remaining behind the camera, directing the fight between James and Kareem. The title written on the slate seen between setups is simply Audition. The title The Game of Death will not be confirmed for some weeks, with the project referred to in a trade announcement under the working title Yellow-Faced Tiger. Born in Guangdong, China in 1942, James Tien moved with his family to Hong Kong in 1958, and after a stint at the Fusheng Drama School in Taiwan, began acting as a contract player for Shaw Brothers in 1969. He decamped to Golden Harvest along with director Lo Wei the following year, and climbed the ladder to leading man status in films such as The Invincible 8, The Blade Spares None, and The Chase. His eyes are being flooded with ultraviolet light. On the second and third takes, the filter is removed. Whether this means the red filter was an experiment that was swiftly abandoned, or if Lee was simply covering his bases by filming the scene both ways, we will never know. However, Bruce attempts another experiment as he films a close-up of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's eyes. Abdul-Jabbar poses static for the camera in a single take. Then, in probably the most mysterious piece of footage filmed for the Game of Death, a still image of Abdul-Jabbar's face is filmed with serpentine, mutant eyes painted on top of his own. How Lee would have incorporated this twist, what it means, and whether it would have even been used at all, is again unknown. The shot is reminiscent of the reveal of the father's eyes in the dream scene from Rosemary's Baby, directed by Lee's friend Roman Polanski, and a supernatural, perhaps even vampiric element seems inevitable, given the character's super strength and aversion to light. But with little else to contextualize it, the shot of the eyes has often been omitted from assemblies of the footage altogether. As the confrontation hurtles towards its final act, Lee writes more dialogue for him and Abdul-Jabbar, including a callback to their earlier exchange. As he pleads for common sense from the Guardian, "Why continue? Just let me pass." Abdul-Jabbar's tired response, delivered through halting breaths, confirms his character's acceptance of his impending fate. "You have forgotten that I too am not bothered by the word death." Though he did not continue training in martial arts after Bruce's death, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar appeared in a variety of cameo appearances in films such as Airplane and Fletch, all while maintaining a record-breaking NBA basketball career until his retirement in 1989. Now aged 75, he remains today a prolific author and a passionate, outspoken advocate of social and racial justice, and in 2016 was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama. Two weeks later, Bruce and his crew return to the same soundstage, now redressed into the third floor of the pagoda, the Hall of the Tiger. The first 2 days of filming are largely dedicated to a fight scene never seen before and long presumed lost, until now. As cameras roll on September 25th, we see James Tien, his scheming character, alive and well, little knowing his doom is still 2 floors ahead. The actor joining him, carrying the large pole, is stuntman turned actor Che Yuan. The actor waiting for them, sitting in the chair, is Dan Inosanto. Though there are no script notes to indicate this, we can infer from his late arrival that Bruce's character, H.N., is busy fighting the Guardian of the second floor of the pagoda, an expert in praying mantis kung fu. Born in 1945 to a Chinese family living in Malaysia, Che Yuan had already firmly established himself for 5 years as an in-demand stuntman at Shaw Brothers, since first appearing in their record-breaking hit, The One-Armed Swordsman. His role in the Game of Death, originally intended for then up-and-coming Golden Harvest fight choreographer Sammo Hung, is of another one of the fighters sent by the Korean mobster to raid the pagoda. His character, unnamed except for Che in Bruce's notes, is immediately contrasted with James Tien's. Dressed in traditional black karate gi clothing, Che's headstrong and less sophisticated character is cannily manipulated by the stylish James Tien, who continually goads him to run into the path of danger first.